Developed by Libraries for the Future and Middle Country Public Libraries, Family Place Libraries are centers for early childhood information, parent education, socialization, and family support.
What does the future hold for this baby? Can we do something now to positively impact her future? Recent studies and new technology show that during the first years of life, we can actually help build the foundation of this child's brain so that she is better prepared, better wired for cognitive development. We now know how to positively influence her future capacity to learn. Family Place Libraries presents Infant Brain Development, the Critical Intervention Point. Dr. Jill Stamm, a clinical professor at Arizona State University and president of the New Directions Institute for Infant Brain Development, is a leading innovator in translating the hard science on wiring the brain and resulting cognitive processes into user-friendly information and practical strategies.
This research is really exciting news for anyone who's caring for a young child, whether it be the parent, a daycare provider, a teacher, or a librarian. Anyone who cares for a young child can benefit by knowing what the science is teaching us, and that is that at the time of birth, the child's brain is only about 25% wired up. But by even 1 year, that wiring is now 75% complete. And by 3 years, 90% of that brain has been formed. And so what it's showing us is that it's literally the experiences that a young child has that goes to form a brain and to allow a child to reach their maximum potential, whatever their heredity might be.
New technologies are allowing us to look inside the brain of a living, healthy person and see the brain as it is working. CAT scans and MRIs show brain structure and chemical function. EEGs record electrical activity. And PET scans show how the brain uses energy when engaged in activity by tracking blood flow. For example, this PET scan demonstrates the difference in brain activity when the eyes are closed and then open, as the blood flow moves to areas that are processing visual information. Here is a more sophisticated look at how different brain areas become active as we move from seeing words to hearing words, to speaking words, and generating new words. This technology has enabled us to document the order and timing as various capacities come online. So what have we learned?
The brain is really a developing organ. It's not just a mini version of an adult brain. The child is actually born, though, with all of the necessary building blocks. We're born with 100 billion neurons that, over the course of the child's life, begin to develop into trillions of connections or synapses. And the child actually uses and seeks out experiences in the environment that help then to form that brain and to take it so rapidly between birth, where it's only 25% wired, and even 1 year old at 75% wiring complete.
To illustrate how quickly the brain begins to wire itself up in response to the environment, these PET scans track brain development. The architecture or structure of the 1-year-old brain is far more similar to that of a 28-year-old adult than it is to the brain of that same child at birth. If the whole child grew at a similar rate, he would weigh 170 pounds by age 1?
It's really exciting because it gives the caregivers, people who care for children, the opportunity to really maximize this window of opportunity for the brain to develop in really healthy ways for learning. The earlier that the parts of the brain develop, the more resistant they are to change, and that's both good news and bad news. If the wiring proceeds normally, that resistance is good. In the sense that a child then has this sort of built-in resiliency later on, because the limbic system is actually the emotional center of the brain that governs emotional regulation. It governs our ability to encode information and then be able to retrieve it, to store information.
Dr. Michael Phelps, UCLA, and co-inventor of the PET scan said, "These developmental years are not just a chance to educate, but they are actually your obligation to form a brain. And if you miss these opportunities, you have missed them forever."
All of those functions are incredibly important, and those all develop, those capacities develop in the first 5 years.
We have talked about wiring the brain and how these synapses are created with astonishing speed during the first 3 years. During this time, children develop an excess amount of neurons and synapses that allow for adaptation to many different conditions and settings. The synaptic density changes over time due to a number of factors.
On the far left, it shows that only 25% of the neurons that we're going to ever have are wired up at birth. The center part shows that by the time a child is 6 years old, the synapses between two neurons have really developed to their maximum. And then by the time a child is in high school, around age 14, it shows another natural biological process called neural pruning. And that neural pruning is actually a good process. Those of us who have had 14-year-olds sometimes point to that and say that that's sort of evidence that they're losing it. It's actually evidence that the brain is streamlining itself to become more specialized. What remains there, what is not pruned away, are those activities that have been repeated over and over and over again.
This graphic shows the peaking of synapses at age 3 and the natural pruning that begins to take place.
The second line, the bottom line, is the line, the trajectory of a different child. That would be a child who has not had those experiences, who actually has been neglected or abused. And we have a lot of the new research is actually research that has come from looking at the brains of children that we know for sure didn't have those experiences. And those were children adopted from the orphanages in Romania.
A tragic social experiment. The Romanian government placed thousands of children in orphanages. These infants were fed and clothed, but were not given the sufficient one-on-one attention they needed.
These brain scans demonstrate what the effects of deprivation can be on the developing brain. The slide on the left shows a normal, typical developing brain, and that on the right is one of a Romanian child who has experienced a great deal of deprivation in those early years. The areas of red and yellow show the greatest use in the brain, and those areas that show up as dark blue or black are barely active.
Science helps us to see that what a young brain needs to wire up well is people time, face time, one-on-one, predictable, responsive care.
We know exactly that those kids did not have enough one-to-one stimulation. They did not have the love and the appreciation of a caregiver. FaceTime turns out to be incredibly important. Singing to a child, rocking the child, hugging the child, talking to the child. The good news is that to get a brain well wired, you don't have to do crazy silly things. You don't have to teach your child in utero 2 different languages. You don't need to go out and buy really expensive toys. We've tried to simplify it and kind of boil it down to 3 things. And those we call the ABCs of early learning. They are attention, bonding, and communication.
A stands for attention. The brain's attention center organizes all goal-oriented behaviors and actions, including purposeful thought, that focuses the mind upon a particular object or idea. The attention center comes online during the second half of the first year.
Children learn how to pay attention probably by having someone pay attention to them. It is a learned skill. It's both a natural skill that we're born with, the ability to focus in on important information, and a learned skill. And so children who are not attended to eventually lose that ability to pay attention easily. And that can be very detrimental, and particularly in a school setting. That ability to pay attention is something that we as caregivers can impact and should. We should purposefully try to extend the child's attention span. Call their attention, if they seem to be wandering, call their attention back to a bright, colorful picture, or make a funny sound to re-engage their attention back to you or back to the discussion that you're having with the child.
The second thing we can do to help wire a child's brain is to bond with the child.
Literally every scientist that is interviewed about this agrees that the single most important thing that you can do for a child is to bond, and to make sure that you have a close attachment between a caregiver and a child. At least one consistent, predictable caregiver in that child's life will be sufficient to help a child to develop normally and to wire up well.
And C stands for communication. Talking with and reading to young children may be one of the most productive, inexpensive, and easiest things we can do to improve later cognitive powers.
There's a wonderful study, again, by Hart and Risley that shows that the sheer number of words that a child hears in their environment in those early years wires the brain differently.
Hart and Risley studied 42 families for 2.5 years, noting the numbers of words spoken during 1 hour in the home and correlating those numbers with education and income level.
It turns out that there's a big difference between Group A, 616 words spoken, and by the third level in Group C, we have over 2,000 words spoken to the child. Later on, when they did testing, they followed these children developmentally over a period of time. It turns out that there is almost a direct correlation between the number of words heard in the child's environment and their later testable IQ.
Hart and Risley's study showed that regardless of socioeconomic status, children who are raised in homes abounding with language experiences are on average brighter. This proactive technique of exposing young children to lots of words is very doable and very inexpensive. Television does not do the trick. Children need face-to-face interaction. They need someone to talk to them, sing to them, read to them, play with them, and cuddle them.
The exciting news is we finally have scientific evidence to back up what parents and caregivers may have known instinctively forever, and that is that it is critical to the development of the brain that the child have sufficient attention, that they have someone to bond with, and that they are talked to and communicated with all of the time. Those things put together really influence brain structure and therefore the effectiveness of a person's brain for the rest of their lives. And the exciting part of this is that it is possible to do. It's within everyone's power to do those things. What we know is that there are programs out there like Family Place where this kind of information can be shared with families in a very naturalistic way. So it turns out that the work that librarians can do directly can impact that child's IQ later on by providing, first of all, in the library, it's a wonderful place. It's filled with books, it's filled with words, it's filled with opportunities for a one-on-one reading to a child. And when you really think about it, reading to a child, if you're holding them on your lap, really combines all three of those: the attention, the bonding, and the communication. The bonding, you're holding them close to you. The communication, you're reading the words in the book, you're talking about ideas. And then attention, you're calling attention to the child to a specific picture. You can actually start to call attention when the child is older and is really ready for this. You can start to call attention to single letters and the sounds that they make. And it's just really a wonderful opportunity for the brain to develop naturally. What I love about Family Place is it's a place where parents can come, where they can interact with one another, they can watch some techniques, they can learn from other parents, and they can watch their children gain an interest in different objects and different activities that they may never have thought of at home.
So what does the future hold for this baby?
The power that this information really has is that it gives the parent the ability to know that they can influence the development of their child's brain and that they can do it very easily and they can do it mindfully. We really have a tremendous power. Every parent, every caregiver has the power to impact that child's ability to learn, really forever.